the fact that you guys are really taking it serious. And then, of course, the best part of all of it is it's all black, but it's NASCAR, right? And
Right,
so, of
right.
course, the first question I have to ask you, because I wasn't going to start with this, but since this is just a perfect transition getting into NASCAR, given that I haven't thought a thing about NASCAR, but the very last time I had you on a podcast, the
I was
very
gonna
first question
say.
I asked you, which is going to be the first question I ask you every time with NASCAR is, how's the racism?
Well, there's no single metric for it, but I'd like to think that racism is down, like we went to the race and you know, I can only comment off the people that I'm around and like the things that I see, and we have friends who go to a lot of races. And like I think it's gotten a lot better. I feel like the audience that they're trying to cultivate is much more of an inclusive audience. It's much more family friendly. It's not just the stereotypical air quotes redneck, beer drinker that people often associate with NASCAR. Now, if you want to be a redneck and drink beer and go to races, that's fine, but you just can't be a bigot in addition to it, right? Like like you can be all of those things, and I think I kind of feel bad because I knew people in college. This is a side tangent, but I knew people in college that were definitely rednecks. They had the deep Southern accent. They went hunting. They shot squirrel and ate it for dinner and all that. And we were best friends. Like those you could be all of those things and not racist. So I kind of hate how like they've kind of taken those things because I know a lot of people, and again, this is only firsthand account, but like they're great people. They invited me to go out with them and go four-wheeling with them and all that stuff, and they have a good time. And then they can go and be in the same room as a black person, not break out in hives, like those things are nice to see. But I think they've gotten a lot better in terms of, like I said, being more inclusive. Obviously, I think the last time we spoke on the pod, the big thing was the ban of the Confederate flag within the track, within the parking lots. The last race I went to last year, of course, like I can't lie and not tell you that I did see a big truck selling, Trump merchandise and Blue Lives Matter flags and like rebel flags. Like those people still exist, and like I'd be lying to you if I said they didn't exist, right? Like I'm not gonna sit here and act like everything's been solved and like this is the one place in the world that racism doesn't exist. It's the 3.5 hours is a NASCAR race. Like I'm not gonna go that far, but they have made a lot of really great strides. And I felt very comfortable at all the races I've been to recently. The group that I talk to, a lot of them go to multiple races a year, all across the Southeast, as many as they can. They'll go sometimes by themselves. They feel comfortable. So I would say they're definitely trending in the right direction. I think there's still work that needs to be done, but I appreciate the effort that's been put in, and you can see, minority track owners now. You see more minorities getting opportunities in terms of media. You can definitely see that, they have a program that's called Drive to Diversity, which they find minority drivers that are young, 15, 17, and they will help train them and try to help them get opportunities to work in racing. So you might be a driver, you might be in the shop, you might be on a pit crew. There's no guarantee, right? You're going to get a ride in a seat at the top level, but they give those drivers opportunities, and it's paid off for NASCAR. Kyle Larson is a champion. He came through that program. Bubba Wallace came through that program. Raj Caruth just won a race a few weeks ago. He's black. He's 20. He's still in college. Like his whole career is ahead of him. He's a problem, like in the best possible way. Like he's going to be a problem. He came through that program. On our show, we've interviewed a couple folks that have come through it. And, you don't really see other leagues doing that sort of program, at least that I know of. So I think the effort is there. It seems like the money they're putting behind it is out there. It's one of those things you have to keep cultivating it until all the fruit comes to bear. But I think they're definitely making the right steps.
It's so interesting because right when we talked, and this is how we're dating ourselves here as far as how long it was ago. But yeah,
Yep.
they banned the Confederate flag. It was a big uproar. Then you had like, I want to say, like Michael Jordan, like wasn't Bubba Wallace driving the Michael Jordan car or something like that? Is he even
Yep.
still involved? Like you can see just how disconnected I've been from NASCAR. And then
Yeah.
you mentioned like people that'll go by themselves. Like I promise you right now, me being as black as I can possibly be will not be showing up to a NASCAR race by myself, but I do want to experience one because just from the way people talk about it, it is a thrill in a different kind of way. I think you're so far from the action at a football game and at a basketball game if you're not like courtside.
Yeah.
And it's so quiet and there's so many pauses, right, for timeouts and which I guess there's some pauses too in NASCAR, but it doesn't feel like a pause. It's loud, it's outside. I guess, well, I assume most of them are outside and like people are cheering and there's 30 people and there's a crash and this, that, and the third. So it definitely seems like something that would be exhilarating. Like I said, going by myself is not an option, but hey,
Well, look,
I'm glad to see that. I'm glad to hear NASCAR is getting blacker because it needed some diversity.
yeah, I mean, I think, if you looked at even just 2000, not that long ago, if you looked at the roster of the top series and not just again the drivers, but the pit crews, the people that work on the cars, the media personalities, that percentage that were just white men, like that was huge. And like that number has definitely changed. Like I said, you see more women now getting involved in the racing. We had a race to start the season in Daytona. I think we had 3 women involved in it. And I think that's a high for a single NASCAR race. So like that's growing a lot too. But yeah, I would say one, if anyone is interested, you should absolutely go to a race. NASCAR racing, I would say, and I've been to, all the big leagues, sports in attendance. It is the one sport that is the most different in person versus on TV. Like if you go to a hockey game, it's way faster in person than on TV. You're like, these boys are buzzing around the ice, right? In basketball, I feel like the athleticism is more impressive seeing what they can do on a court. But with NASCAR, it is such a different beast. Like I cannot put into words, I cannot undersell how different it is. When they fire up, I mean, it is the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. Like you have to have ear protection or you will go deaf. Like it's absolutely mandatory. And it is so fast. I mean, the sights, the smells, the rubber, the gas, like all of those things. Like if you have any interest in like going fast or like seeing things go fast, like it is a different world. Even at the smaller tracks, they're still doing 120. Imagine going 120 in a half-mile circle for 500 laps for 3.5 hours. Like it's a real test of endurance, not just of the machine, but of you as the human, because those cars get to be 150 degrees and you can sweat out 10 pounds in a race easy. Like they don't have AC in the cars, right? Like everything's about weight reduction. So
Mm.
it's really just an impressive. I have so much respect for the drivers, and we talk about it on the show a lot, but like it's so hard mentally, physically on them. It's so taxing. So I have such a respect for them. But yeah, like it's such a unique experience that I really wish more people could experience. Like that's what I would tell someone. Like, don't watch it on TV first if you can. Like if you have the means, if the schedule lines up to it, I'd say go to one in person first, just because it's that nice. Like it's that amazing. And I will say also, just because of the size of the venues, the tracks, that it's really hard to have a bad seat at a race. If you're down low, it's great. If you're up high, it's great. If you're somewhere in the middle, they're all staggered. So, I feel like, we've been to basketball games and like if you're in the nosebleeds, like you can't see anything. Like you're watching ants run around basically. But at a NASCAR race, like there's really no bad seats, and it is such a just a thrilling experience. Like every week, there's storylines that carry out. Um, the fact that you've got every driver on the court on the track at the same time is something that I think is a bit unique, right? Like you go to a basketball game, you watch 2 teams, right? And like that's fine. And this isn't a knock on other sports, because I love team sports as well. Like I love my football, I love my basketball. Like, we talk about those sports all the time. But when you go to a NASCAR race, it's 36 teams and they're all gunning for it. And there's a lot more variability in terms of who could win. Now you've got some drivers that might be favorites versus others. They may have better equipment versus others, but you really don't know until late what happens. At the race we were just at, they raced for about 3.5 hours, 300, let's say 98 laps, 2 laps to go. The guy in front is ahead, he's gonna win. Like he's at the best car all day, right? as long as he finishes the next 30 seconds of driving, he'll win the race. Something happens, they have a caution, they have to pit, change tires. He loses the lead, loses the race. Now, that's how quickly you can just have it snatched away from you. And so if you're a fan of the guy who won, like that's how quickly you can go from I'm in third place with 30 seconds to go. Like I have zero shot. And all of a sudden, boom, you're right back in it. So, and like every race, of course, isn't that great, but it's just more unpredictable, I would say, than team sports. Like every week you go into it, you have no idea what's going to happen. And I mean, I could wax poetically about it for hours. I mean, I do on the podcast, but like it's just such a fun experience. Just the uniqueness of it, and there's other forms of racing, and I respect what they do, but for me, like NASCAR is what I grew up on as a kid with my grandfather. Like it's all I've loved. That was my first love of motorsports was NASCAR. So to me, there's nothing better than it.
I'm gonna tell you something. Hey, you need to find a way to get yourself some paid promotion because you just sold that to me. I tell you, I'll tell you what, that was something that made me like, oh man, that sounds so exciting. One of the things about like going to live events versus watching them on TV, I don't know if it's this way with NASCAR, and it remind me to go back to when you mentioned you're getting press credentials and all that stuff. But like going to a live basketball game, I remember watching the Cavs. This is when LeBron was in Cleveland and on his second stint, and they were playing like the Wizards. I was living in Richmond, DC was a couple hours away. And I just remember watching the game, and I didn't realize how much I value or how much I rely on commentary and like the screen to tell me
The
what's
tracker,
going on.
yeah,
So
everything.
all
Yep.
of a sudden, I look up, okay, Cleveland won. LeBron had 22, 12, and 10, and Kevin Love had 35 points. And I was like, wait, when? Like I was just watching the game, had no clue that the Cleveland Cavaliers were up 20. Kevin Love had 35 points. He was on a heater. LeBron had a triple-double. Kyrie didn't play that night. And like I had no clue whatsoever. Is it the same like that with NASCAR, or are you a little bit more in tune what's going on?
So I think you're a bit more in tune because I feel like you have a better sense, like, and of course, like the more you watch it, the more you learn about it. I'm not going to say like someone who comes in is going to necessarily understand every strategic move, but you can come in and watch a race and figure out, okay, these guys are pitting, they're going to have fresher tires, they're about to be faster than everybody else. Well, someone else might say, I might try to wait and pit and be faster than you later on in the race, right? Like those kind of strategy moves. But honestly, I feel like if I see one car is ahead of another by 10 car lengths and 5 laps later they're side by side, well, I can watch that guy run him down. And now it's a case where you've caught him, but can you pass him? Right? Those are two different things. And I think it's two different skills just because of the way the cars work. Like they're so sensitive. The air around the cars changes when they get close to each other, right? Like these are literally closer to rocket ships and fighter jets and anything. Like they're so affected by the air and the wind around them. But if I watch him catch him, well, now can he pass him? Right? Can he get the lead? Is he trying to stretch it on fuel? Like there's so many different things. We saw a race a few weeks ago where they had teammates, and one guy was in second place, and they were coming up on his teammate who was, a lap down. He had a bad race. Is he going to block for him? Right? Is he going to be a pick to try to help his teammate catch up? Like all of these like little nuances to the race can happen. And like you never plan it, right? Like they didn't sit up there on a Tuesday before the race on the weekend and say, okay, well, we're going to make sure that we pick for you, with 5 laps to go. But I feel like you can go in and you can appreciate the experience of the race for what it is if you've gone in completely cold. All the tracks have a giant pylon that has all the numbers and the running order for drivers, and they all have giant big screens as well. So you can keep track of like if there's a certain driver you want to root for, you can find out where they're racing at any given moment. But I think the TV does help, but it really just provides context. If I had to trade in watching it just on TV and having the announcers versus watching it in person, I take in person 36 races a year. Like it's that much better. And even if you do go, this is another thing that's unique about NASCAR is that you can go and rent ahead of time headsets, these big headsets like we have on, and you can go and listen to the radio and you can get the TV broadcast, you can get the radio broadcast, you can listen to the team communications. So I can go and rent a headset for $20 and go to the track, and I can listen to Bubba Wallace's team radio. Like, it's the exact team radio. And they'll say, okay, we're going to pit in 2 laps. And you watch in 2 laps, he'll come around, he'll pit, because it's the exact team radio. That's just something that's unique about NASCAR. They offer that, you know, the big 4 in terms of team sports, like, they don't offer that. Like, I can't listen to, you know, Patrick Mahomes in the huddle, get a call, you know, like, that's just never going to happen. Because of the nature of NASCAR, that's something you can do as well. Like, if you just want to have a fuller experience. But yeah, I think you could go and absolutely have a good time. Just bring some earplugs. That's my one rule. Like, bring the best earplugs you got. Maybe bring 2, because it's the loudest thing you will ever hear. And it hurts. You take those earphones out, it hurts your ears. It's just painful. That's how loud it is.
Damn. Well, yeah, I'm not trying to go deaf, but that sounds really cool. And I know that at one point you were planning on going to one, and again, this was right after the trip to Asheville. Like I said, like the trip that went wrong. And I don't know, like I don't know what happened. I wasn't able to go or whatever. But yeah, that's definitely something that interests me. The last thing before we move, since we're still in like the NASCAR space, you know, you mentioned you guys like now you guys can, or well, at least you applied for some press credentials in your own press row, and you're doing this, that, and the third. Does that change the experience for you? Just given the fact that now you don't really get to go as a fan. It's almost like you're kind of going for work. And I understand you're, you know, you love this podcast and stuff, and you love this NASCAR stuff. So therefore it's a match made in heaven. But it's like, okay, I'm here now. I got to make sure that I hit X, Y, and Z, whether it's I need to make sure I get a certain amount of interviews, or I need to make sure that I'm getting, I don't really know how the press works with NASCAR, but making sure I get some questions out there, getting pictures, or just getting that kind of access. Because when we talked about what people don't understand when it comes to podding, it's just, it is work. And so you don't get to just, oh yeah, I sat in the press box, but I didn't do nothing, because then you didn't get anything out of that. And then what were the point of the credentials? You could have just, other than maybe getting into the job, the place for free, and maybe getting a parking pass. Otherwise, like, what are you doing?
Right. Yeah, I would say, you know, the only part that I didn't like about it, and this is just a personal thing, is I'm not good at networking. Like, I fully admit that for me, even when I was in college, that was the thing I hated most, like, coming out of college, you know, trying to grow a career in the professional world, was networking. That's the only thing that I don't like about it, but I recognize it as something that's necessary. You know, like, you have to go up and introduce yourself to strangers and give out business cards, and, you know, try to build some relationships, or at least make sure that they know you're there and are memorable. Because, you know, the same people that we and like the NASCAR will know as like the main media figures, well, they're having lunch at the table next to us or at the table with us. So on the one hand, it's like you can't be starstruck. Like, my partner that was with me, like, he was like, holy shit, like, this is so, oh, sorry, I don't know if I can cuss on here, but
You're good. You're good.
Okay. But he was like, oh shit, like, this is so and so right here. And it's like, yeah, but we have to be cool about it. Like, we have to keep our act together. Like, we can't be like, oh my God, it's so great to meet you, right? Like, because like, as far as he knows, like, we're peers. And yes, we are peers, but, you know, this is our first race as press credential. This is probably his 600th, right? So like, it's no big deal for him. So that was the only hard part, I would say. You know, everyone that we did meet and interact with was very nice. You know, like, there wasn't anyone that was like really stuck up or like, you know, try to big league us or anything like that. You know, a lot of people recognize, like, okay, you're someone new. Like, I travel to every race in this circle. I haven't seen you before, so I know you're new. Right. And so, like, a lot of people recognize, like, hey, you're trying to get your name out there. Like, we had the podcast, you know, shirts on and all that stuff, like, to promote it from that side as well. So everyone there was really cool. But that was the biggest thing. That would be the only negative, was like trying to network in like the first half of the day. But then, like, once the race starts, like, you're paying close attention to it, but I'm still watching almost through my analytical fan eyes, just like I would at home. Like, I'm still trying to break down the race and understand the moves. I just have a better seat, you know, like, in the press box beats my couch every time. So that was the biggest thing.
Nice. Well, look, man, more power to you. I hope that thing gets going. And then I definitely want to, like, when we end this, we'll make sure that we roll the red carpet and just make sure you can let people know what you got going on, because I think that that's a niche. That's a, I don't want to call it a niche. That feels disrespectful. That's a avenue of sports that a lot of people don't know. And I feel like, because like you said, it's not one of the big four. It's not basketball, football, baseball, or hockey. Um, Nor is it soccer. But I feel like when you talk about all these elements that there are with it, and like, yeah, I can go rent the headphone. That's nuts. Just like, imagine when
Yeah,
the Lakers call a timeout and you can go put in and you can hear what they're saying in the huddle for at the game or whatever. That
yeah,
is nuts. But I think it's just something that, just like, with lack of, it doesn't get a whole lot of coverage. It's not on a lot of TV. It's not on the primetime stuff. So having more, once people get more information, basically, it'll develop more of an audience. So that's actually really cool.